now for a closer look at inter-Korean relations and what to expect from upcoming tariff negotiations between South Korea and the United States. We're joined today by Professor Ban Kil Joo, Assistant Professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy. Professor Ban, thanks for joining us this morning.
Hello, good to be here.
So South Korea's unification minister has said the government is seeking to reinstate a no-fly zone under the suspended inter-Korean military pact after civilians allegedly flew drones across the border recently. How might this affect inter-Korean relations?
Honestly, it remains to be seen whether it could affect inter-Korean relations positively or not. Meanwhile, the efforts to mitigate tension on the Korean Peninsula are crucial in a situation where North Korea becomes more provocative by laying out more offensive policies such as the hostile two-state relationship. To that end, all efforts might be needed, ranging from facilitating diplomacy to bolstering leverage. In this regard, a policy to reinstate a no-fly zone cannot be excluded for policy review in an effort to ease tension on the Korean Peninsula. In fact, South Korea's proactive measures could send a signal to North Korea that Seoul is sincere to improve relationship with Pyongyang, affecting inter-Korean relations at least temporarily. But at the same time, if this measure were to be more effective in affecting inter-Korean relations positively and sustainably, the three conditions might be taken into consideration. First, coordinated efforts between agencies. Second, maintaining deterrence. And third, making it reciprocal. First of all, when it comes to coordination and division of labor between agencies, the Ministry of Defense, not the Ministry of Unification, should be more responsible for the decision of whether a no-fly zone is reinstated or not. It would be better if the Ministry of Defense acted as a primary player and the Ministry of Unification play a role in supporting the Ministry of Defense. This type of coordination would be advantageous for making this decision more effective. In particular, the fact that North Korea violated the CMA, the Comprehensive Measures Agreement, should not be forgotten in order to prevent the rise of another quagmire. Second, the reinstatement of a no-fly zone should not lead to weakening deterrence on the Korean Peninsula. To that end, how to gather information in a timely manner and maintain military readiness under a no-fly zone needs to be carefully examined. Third, South Korea's proactive efforts to reinstate a no-fly zone should be made under a reciprocal calculus. To put it another way, how Pyongyang responds to Seoul's proactive efforts matters more in affecting inter-Korean relations positively. Mitigating tension on the Korean Peninsula would not be feasible without reciprocity.
I see. And turning to broader diplomacy, Japan recently announced its plans to invest $36 billion in the United States, and analysts say Washington may step up pressure on Seoul. How might this affect tariff negotiations between South Korea and the United States?
Well, the Trump administration has been dissatisfied with the delay in implementing investment plans, particularly while targeting South Korea and Japan. For instance, the Trump administration announced to raise tariffs on Korea to 25%. Similarly, the Trump administration was grumbling about the situation that Japan had not executed a detailed plan. With this in mind, I would say that the two things compelled Japan to proactively unleash the first detailed plan to invest $36 billion among the $550 billion investment package that the United States and Japan agreed on. First, a precedented effect, and second, the upcoming U.S.-Japan summit. First of all, Japan saw the United States raise its leverage towards South Korea when an action plan was delayed. Second, Japan wanted to create conditions for the success of an upcoming U.S.-Japan summit in a situation where Prime Minister Takaichi is scheduled to visit the White House next month. Not surprisingly, Trump mentioned that Japan launches first projects in energy, power, and minerals through Truth Social. This message is sent not simply to Japan, but also to South Korea in a situation where South Korea and the United States continue to talk about detailed investment packages. In this vein, South Korea could be more burdened and pressured to launch detailed action items for the $350 billion investment package. But at the same time, how to balance timing for the action plan with systematic process would be crucial in the long-term perspective.
Right, and part of that $350 billion investment package includes shipbuilding cooperation. And the United States recently released its Maritime Action Plan and said Washington will strengthen cooperation with allies like South Korea and Japan. What does this mean for South Korea's shipbuilding cooperation plan with the United States?
Well, the layout of the Maritime Action Plan by the White House clearly shows that the ROK-US relationship is defined as a profitable alliance. As you may be aware, the Trump administration has converted the alliance formula from shared threats to the balance of interests. Under the re-articulated formula, the ROK-US alliance modernization architecture was established recently, as shown by the 2025 joint fact sheet. The MASCA, Make American Shipbuilding Great Again, proposed by South Korea is included in the ROK-US alliance modernization. I would say that the Maritime Action Plan could be defined as America's version of the MASCA program, although it began with Trump's executive order under the name of Restoring America's Maritime Dominance on 9 April 2025. In fact, the Maritime Action Plan is composed of 4 pillars. First, rebuilding U.S. shipbuilding capacity. Second, reforming the workforce. Third, protecting the industrial base. And finally, security and resilience. In Pillar 3, it defines the United States' relationship with South Korea and Japan as historic cooperation for shipbuilding. With this in mind, the ROK-US shipbuilding cooperation should be in a better position, particularly in the sense that both sides have been institutionalizing the shipbuilding cooperation through official documents such as the joint fact sheet and the Maritime Action Plan, as I noted earlier. In the meantime, more efforts are needed in order to fully institutionalize this cooperation through other efforts, such as detailed plans and bipartisan support by both countries.
I see. And Professor Ban, before we let you go, this weekend, Brazil's president is set to make a state visit to South Korea. This is his first state visit in 21 years. It's also the first time President Lee will host a state visit by a foreign leader since he returned to the Blue House. What might be on the agenda when they meet?
Well, comprehensive cooperation would be on the agenda, which includes trade, technology, AI, agriculture, defense industry, and societal exchanges, in the sense that Brazil's President Lula will make a state visit to South Korea, neither an official visit nor a working visit. Brazilian President's state visit will be made in 21 years since 2005, as you mentioned. President Lee and President Lula have already met at the G7 summit in Canada in June 2025. So I would say that they are now ready to discuss detailed items based on a precedent diplomatic relationship. In particular, the two leaders are expected to jointly adopt a 3-year plan in terms of improving bilateral relations. Under this bilateral scheme, they plan to bolster bilateral cooperation practically in various sectors, including energy, climate science, and cultural exchanges. From the standpoint of South Korea, Lula's visit will serve as an opportunity for Seoul to expand its diplomatic horizon toward the global south. Similarly, South Korea plans to hold the summit with the Central Asian nations in September this year for the first time in South Korea's diplomatic history, in an effort to expand its diplomatic horizon to the global south. South Korea's diplomatic expansion contributes to fulfilling its diplomatic objective, which is the global responsive power diplomacy proposed by the current ROK administration. In the meantime, I wonder how the improving relations between South Korea and Brazil create synergy with ROK-US relations in a situation where Trump administration seeks a Western Hemisphere-led strategy.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that summit goes. All right, Professor Pan, thank you so much for your time and insight today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.